Good evening. Welcome to this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show. My name is Leon Jones. Today is Thursday, September 15th, 2016. Tune in to the 411 Talk Zone radio show every Saturday on Blog Talk Radio from 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Call-in number is 215-383-5785. Also, if you like my videos, please share and subscribe to the 411 Talk Zone radio show channel so I can give you quality information for educational purposes from a professional and mature perspective. Also, tune in my channel. This channel is not for the dramatic or the emotional individuals, so please be respectful. If you have a business or a topic that you would like for me to discuss on my YouTube channel or Blog Talk Radio, please email me at lej6521@gmail.com. Please feel free to comment. Now make sure your comments are pithy, straight to the point, no bloviating, if you wish to opine. Now on to this evening's topic. We're going to talk about the 4 types of economic systems. You'll always hear 2 of them in a political arena. We're talking about socialism and capitalism. Well, today, let you know that these are 2 of the 4 systems economies. Now, I'm going to lay out for you the type of economy and then the advantages and disadvantages. We'll start off with your basic traditional economic system. It's mainly rural, agricultural, it's farming. These areas tend to be from the third world class countries. However, there is an increasingly small population of nomadic peoples who run these economies. They never see a profit or surplus. Now, the advantage to this type of company or this economy, it tends to be more traditional, while it is virtually non-existent in mixed economies. Number 2, each member of this economy has a specific and pronounced role, and these societies tend to be satisfied. Now, here's the disadvantage to a traditional economic system. The system doesn't enjoy things other economies take for granted, such as medicine, technology, etc. Although happiness is not guaranteed through those other items. Now, there's the second type called the command economic system. In a large part, this system is controlled by a centralized power. It's known as communism. Now, this kind of economy tends to develop when a country finds itself in possession of very large resources. That's when the government steps in and regulates all the resources. Now, the government in this economic system only desires to control most of the valuable resources, while other things, such as agriculture, tend to be run by the people. Now, the advantage of this type of system is, as long as the government is intelligent and regulations are in order, these advantages will be applied. In other words, the government wants to keep everything centralized, more of a bureaucracy. Now, this economy is capable of creating a healthy supply of its own resources, and it generally rewards its own people with affordable prices. But because it's ultimately regulated by the government, it's ultimately priced by the government. Still, there is often no shortage of jobs, as government functions similarly to a market economy, and it can grow, and that's based upon the populace. The market economic system is very similar to a free market. Now, the government does not control vital resources, valuable goods, or any other major segment of the economy. In this way, organizations run by people determine how the economy runs, how supply is generated, and where demands are necessary. Now, in the United States, you always hear that we're a capitalist country. Technically, we're not. We're more of a mixed economy. Now, a mixed economy is You have the government that regulates some part with the government programs, but you also have free market. So it is we can call it a social capitalist system or mixed market. It is not a planned economy like a communist economy. Now, with capitalism, an economic and political approach in which countries' trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit rather than by the state. Now, an advantage to that system is that it can build up an explosive economy that is well controlled and safe. In other words, there's no government regulations. Now, if you look at socialism, socialism is a way of organizing a society to which major industries are owned and controlled by the government rather than by individual people or companies. The government in this type of system controls the most valuable resources while it leaves the rest of the market to operate freely. So it is very, very close to a free market, except it's the flip side of a free market, where the government controls the resources, where in the free market, the government does not control the resources. Now, with the market economic system advantages, separation of the market and government, the government is prevented from becoming too powerful. This way, also known as a dual economy, this system refers to amalgamation, which is a mixture of market and command economy. Now, the advantages of an amalgamated economy, the market is more or less free of government ownership except for a few key areas. It's education, the postal service, and transportation. And when I mean transportation, who runs the transportation? The Federal Highway Administration. So a mixed economy or dual economy, which that's a combination, as I mentioned, of socialism and capitalism. This is what the United States is under. This is why you have your government programs, and this is why you have your private sector. Now, the disadvantage to this type of economy is that it can suffer from downfalls. For example, the last 100 years, the U.S. has seen a rise in government power, not just in imposing laws and regulation, but in actually gaining control, becoming more difficult to access while simultaneously becoming less flexible. This is where you get all the environmental regulations. This is why your base price for your car goes up. This is why you have carbon emissions. Now, I'm not saying that the intent is bad, but we are getting to where the government wants to control every aspect of our lives. Now, you look at it now, because of the health care bill, the government now controls 1/6 or 17% of the economy. Now, you have the debate between the Democrats and Republicans, and it's based on the amount of government control. Now, where should we have more government regulation? I don't believe so. But we do need government to control what we call collusion. This is where you see all the gas stations. Let's see if John's gas is $3 per gallon, and then you go to Ray's gas station, it's $3 per gallon. Well, all the gas stations are setting the same prices, so it's almost like I call it a monopoly, where you have the resource, gas, setting all the prices, and this is by the speculators. Well, this is where you need government intervention, so that won't happen, because we have to keep the economy growing. But the more government intrusion, this is where you have a rise in a lot of goods and services, like now. So that's what I tell people. When you're dealing with economics, you have to look at the law of supply and demand. Now, when you have an intersection between supply and demand, you have what we call an equilibrium price. Economies tend to be very cyclical. The lowest point is the trough, and the highest point is your peak. Now you have your depression and you have your recovery. Right now, we are in a recovery. Now, if you look at all four types of economies that I had mentioned, they all have their advantages and disadvantages. So this should actually dictate where you want to live. Now, I prefer a mixed economy because you do have the freedom to make money, but you also have your safety net with your government. But it's funny how governments become more powerful, but we don't see it going the other way where private sector is more powerful. That's also dangerous as well. So what I'm trying to tell you is understand the four types of economy before you get into any type of business. And this is what I said in my last video when I talked about going to school for certain types of degrees. You want to have a degree that's needed in the market. And that's based off of these four types of economies. You know, your socialism, capitalism, your mixed economy, and your free market. Now, going back to the one I mentioned about traditional, you have a little bit of agriculture. But again, with your agriculture, that's your third world, and this is where all of our companies are outsourced to, because that's where you get a lot of the cheaper labor and the cheaper resources. Now, if it were me, if you want to come back into this country, I'm going to slap a 50%, 60% tariff on you. Because what you're doing, you're leaving this country for free labor, almost free labor. You're an American company, but you want to charge me a higher price for what you can make here. That's unfair. And that's why I did not agree with the passage of the NAFTA agreement. So, I got this from thequizlet.com. I'll post this link in my description box. Just be sure to take a look at it. This is good information for you to understand, tell you how to balance a checkbook, and for you to understand business. Now, that's my commentary for this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show. Till next time, my name is Leon Jones. Remember to be gentle and respectful to each other. Have a wonderful and blessed evening.